G'day Cheekies, welcome to New Game Plus TV live on Twitch, but you might be joining us on C31, C44, or Apple or Spotify podcasts, provided they're going out to those platforms properly. Fingers crossed. My name's Cringe. I'm joined this week by Jason and Kart. Coming up on the show, Jason, you want to talk about Monster Hunter World and the expansions, basically, like that it's still a really, really good game that you should go out and buy.
So it's literally the last monster. So this was the last major content update. So Fatalis was the last big one that they put effort into, pageantry, cutscenes, like story elements. It's the last canon monster, if you will, for Monster Hunter World. And yeah, I don't know. We finally beat it the other night on stream, and I still think that even if you were to come in at this late stage, it incentivizes people to help you out. So I still think it's a really good game if you are coming into it late, and it's like you see, it's on special all the time. I still think it's worth it. So that's I figured I just want to do a bit of a kind of a debrief, if you will, like a debrief on the game and kind of what it's accomplished and what it's done.
Kart, you've been playing. It's called Going Under.
Yes, so I've been playing a couple of indie titles, just been kind of jumping back and forth, but Going Under is a game that has resonated with me for the past couple of weeks. I've been following its development for quite some time, and finally came out, I think either the start of this month or late last month. So I've had a fair amount of intimate time with it, and I'm very excited to, wax lyrical about it later in the show.
Exciting stuff. Before we get into any of that, though, 2K has added unskippable ads into NBA 2K21 pre-game loading screens. Deviver have recorded unskippable ads for the Oculus Quest 2. They now appear inside the PS4, Xbox One, and Windows PC versions of the game. They're attached to a pre-game video called My Team Season 2 Episode 7 that's auto-started in a loading screen that takes longer than the ad runs, even on a PC running from an SSD. Back in September, EA received so much criticism for adding in-game ads to UFC 4 and its replays that they actually removed them shortly after. Quote, "It is abundantly clear from your feedback that integrating ads into the replay and overlay experience is not welcome," end quote, EA said at the time. "The advertisements have been disabled by the team, and we apologize for any disruption to gameplay that players may have experienced."
When even EA goes, cool, we're going to react, we're just going to take the pedal off that one, and 2K just plows ahead, that's an awful.
Yeah, I think it's largely contextual on what's considered right and what's considered wrong. Because, again, as you mentioned before, if it's something like just a flat texture advertising on a billboard or even
in
like
a stadium or something,
it makes sense because you're creating that atmosphere of you're playing in a stadium, you're playing in on a basketball court, for example. Yeah. But actively having something that invasive, I can understand why so many people are cranky about it, because you've paid $90 for
or for next gen version,
whatever X amount for the next gen version, completely related. You paid that much for this kind of game for whatever it is, escapism or immersion or anything like that. And yeah, you've got you have this stuff just peddled at you and shoved down your throat, and you're like.
Sony can now record voice chat audio, which users can submit to the company for moderation review. The ability to do so was added as part of a PS4 firmware update. In a PlayStation blog post, Sony said, voice chat recording for moderation is a feature that will be available on PS5 when it launches and will enable users to record their voice chats on PS5 and submit them for moderation review. The pop-up you're seeing on PS4 right now is to let you know that when you participate in a chat with a PS5 user after launch, they may submit those recordings from their PS5 console to Sony Interactive Entertainment. Catherine Jensen, Sony Interactive Entertainment's Vice President for Global Consumer Experience, later clarified on the PlayStation blog that only the most recent 5 minutes of a voice chat will be available to a player to use for this reporting function. The first ever Twitch stream by US Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez drew 439,000 peak concurrent viewers, the highest peak ever for a politician. This beat the previous peak concurrent record by a politician, 124,000 viewers on a stream from US Senator Bernie Sanders. Ocasio-Cortez's stream consisted of several hours of her playing the game Among Us alongside fellow US Representative Ilhan Omar and popular gaming streamers Jacksepticeye, HBummerGuy, and and others. According to Polygon, the commentary was largely devoid of political campaigning, but Ocasio-Cortez did frequently remind her viewers that she's doing this for a reason, to get people to vote. Valve co-founder Gabe Newell wants to help studios relocate to the country, to New Zealand, I should probably clarify, at least temporarily. Most of the chat is under a non-disclosure agreement, but some snippets have been shared. Valve News Network reports that Newell is planning a meeting with the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to possibly discuss moving Valve and other developers into the country, escaping the trials and tribulations of designing games while working from home. Quote, because I've been going on a pro-New Zealand campaign lately, it's like the last
Choice
few months.
brew. Yeah, choice brew.
I'm probably going to be meeting with the Prime Minister, and one of the positions I'm going to be arguing for is that given there is something super valuable that has been created here in New Zealand due to the hard work of the population of New Zealand, there is likely a large want to temporarily relocate production teams into the country, end quote. Newell also suggested that coronavirus has knocked productivity at Valve down by 50 to 75%, and that it hadn't really come up with a solution to the big changes that working from home forces upon developers. That is the news of this week. Stick with us. We got more video game goodness coming up in just a sec. Hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. You might also be joining us via C31, C44, or Apple or Spotify podcasts. I'm Cringe, and I'm here with Jason and Kart. Hello. You've both been playing Monster Hunter for a very, very long time. Monster Hunter World came out a while ago. I feel like it was in 2017. I remember
2.5 years ago.
I guess,
2018 January.
Oh, yeah, it was, because it was RE. Yeah, right. Yeah.
EB Expo, and I demoed Monster Hunter, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And Kat was like, it's okay, take your time. And I needed it. But Monster Hunter World has been out since, December 2017. I think that's the Japanese release date then. It has gotten a number of expansions. It has gotten Frost, what are they called?
Iceborne.
And then the most recent one.
So Iceborne is the main one. So may I, Jack?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so main game comes out, and they've released a bunch of monsters and stuff since. They ended basically the base game with, I'm pretty sure Kulve Taroth was HR, Cardi? I'm nearly certain Kulve Taroth was HR.
There is a high rank variant of Kulve.
Yeah. So so that was the kind of the last big thing. And then they announced pretty reasonably early they were going to do Iceborne, which was going to be the one big patch, which was going to be the G rank patch. It's what kind of what master rank is after you go low rank, high rank, master rank. And master rank is basically end game. They'll start bringing out all the fan favorites. They'll start bringing out all these events. They'll start bringing out all this. And the last monster just came out maybe 3 weeks ago, Fatalis. And then they did one more small update, which was they gave Arch-Tempered Valk. I'm pretty sure is the latest one. And so that's the end of Monster Hunter World ongoing support outside of rotating events, outside of, hey, this random events back, would you like to play it kind of thing.
So that's the main big content chunks.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So they announced Monster Hunter Rise for the Switch, so they've gone back to the portable. So while they had the release of Monster Hunter World, not long after that they released Generations on Switch, wasn't it, Cardi?
It was so on Switch there was Generations Ultimate, which is an upgraded port of the 3DS one. The last 3DS release.
Yeah. So, and that was what you would say is the traditional Monster Hunter experience. Like it's more traditional than Monster Hunter World, because the one thing Monster Hunter World had going for it was the fact that because it was on these next gen consoles at the time, because it was on these powerhouses compared to the usual handhelds, 3DSs and stuff like that.
PSP.
Yeah. I mean, but Vita and PSP always had a reasonably strong Monster Hunter community anyway, but because you had this thing, a lot of the limitations of the hardware are gone. So one thing the Monster Hunter used to do was when you went from, say, Zone 1 to Zone 2, there was like an animation or like a loading screen to go between the two, and then you're in Zone 2. So you could have like a monster flee from Zone 1 to Zone 12, and usually there's a short way there. So it's like, cool, if we go left here, we cut to 6, and then we cut through there to 12. And so you don't have to go through 12 individual load screens, but you could get knocked back through that. You could walk in, get knocked back through that, and then you have to go through the loading phase again. Monster Hunter World did away with that. Basically, each map was, all the individual sections were connected. You could still use the map to find your spot, but there were so many quality of life upgrades that even as clunky as it still ended up being, the quality of life upgrades, at least for me, Cardi, and maybe it's different for you, make it hard for me to play Generations Unlimited now. I like going back and having to deal with some of those things. I can't do it. It just really grates on me having to do that.
At least from the perspective of mechanical things as well, like being able to kind of work a little bit better vertically and horizontally, jumping around and also like kind of going through all the, searching for local fauna, the map and all that sort of stuff. The way you just move around the map in general, like, vaulting over stuff, everything just all is very seamless, very great, especially when you're also utilizing and using, I guess, verticality as leverage in combat, jumping off, mounting, all that sort of stuff, all works incredibly well in World. But if we're going to be talking about the perspective of, I guess, user friendliness, even at least from having training grounds where you can train using combos and getting the most out of your weapons and, going the most optimized routes. You also had new additions. Like, I think one of the major one was... Actually, no, I think item loadouts were introduced in Monster Hunter 3 or 4 or something, but there was a lot of other loadouts that you could add. And even the radial dial as well is probably the one big one that that is really hard to come back from, because obviously on the 3DS you could use your touchscreen, you could program it to operate using items. But it was very limited as to what you could do with it. And there was other options and other ways that you could use the touchscreen. So compared to a radial dial where you can just pick up and choose like 4 different programmable shortcuts and you can use it to your liking, you can add emotes, you can add items, you can add consumables and all that sort of stuff.
Crafting,
as well. Like all that stuff is not in previous versions of the game. So I find it interesting that a lot of purists are very against World for that reason. Like they accused Capcom of watering down the game, but if anything, they've made it easier over what has always been an intrinsically difficult and complex game to understand. As Jack said before, he was like, "Well, I have no idea what this game is about," and it's like, well, World is probably the perfect place to start. As unironically, like as the most like serious tone I can possibly use, like it really is a game that fixes a lot of the quirk and the jank of the previous games, just because of its PvE nature, is that it cultivates a sense of community. And the great way about how the game works is that everyone who gets involved, no matter how long you've been playing the game for, will get rewarded to some degree, whether it be you get material to create layered weapons, which is basically like glamours if you've played MMOs, and just parts for your weapon in general. So even if you were being accused of carrying a bunch of people, even if it's someone you haven't even known, you can use SOS flares to just go to completely different servers and help people out. As long as someone's hunting that monster, you can go and search for them by monster or search for them by rank or that kind of stuff. So
I will say that as well, Cardi. You touched on it there, but I'll follow it up. The Monster Hunter community has always been known for being a little bit elitist. And when I say a little bit, I mean a fucking lot elitist, right? And I think World, that's not quite as prevalent as it used to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's still some people who hinge their self-worth on it. And, you can still find the occasional toxic person, but I find the community for World is less prone to those same things that the earlier communities tended to have. And maybe that's just an observation from, what was basically the outside for the previous games, but I don't get the same elitism when you're talking to people about Monster Hunter World.
I think you're on the money. You're onto something there, because I think obviously with the nature of World, where a lot of people let's be honest, the good majority of people who are playing World are playing their very first Monster Hunter game, or at least getting involved in their very first Monster Hunter game. I know you're involved, you're included in that group. So they don't really have that much of that kind of purist history behind that at all.
The game, even in and of itself, even in its grind, has some interesting, like, fun elements to it. So
it's got a good loop. It's enough variables out there to keep it fresh. And
a great gameplay loop is a good way to put it.
I mean, you obviously start off with fighting a monster, learning its patterns, learning its animations, and all that sort of stuff, finding exploits. But then after that, as you mentioned before, like if you're looking for a particular part or something like that, you got to also start capturing the monster or start gaining knowledge of whether or not you can do wing breaks, you can cut off its tail, you can do all sorts of things. So again, like there's a lot of layers to it that eventually start to unravel the more you play it. And then I think that definitely the end game is like you just being more efficient at killing that monster. I mean, you've seen all those YouTube videos of like, we'll kill a Nergigante in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of practice. That's a lot of hours of practice to get to that point. So the game definitely encourages you going back and just constantly organically learning these new things, these new tricks and all that sort of stuff. And its gameplay loop is incredibly satisfying.
Cool. So Monster Hunter World, along with its 2 expansions, has been out for a while. When was the most recent expansion out?
There's only one expansion, it's Iceborne, but there's been a lot of post-release.
The new monster, yeah.
There's been a lot of post-release updates since then that have been for free.
New monster was mid-September, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, it was start of October, wasn't it?
Start of October.
Yeah,
it was end of September. It was like 30th of September.
Was the Fatalis drop. Yeah.
Cool. And then Monster Hunter Rise is coming out March next year. So even if you're looking forward to Rise, you're going to get a kick out of World, even if you've not played a Monster Hunter game.
Agreed. And it's on Game Pass, so you can try it out for free.
Good stuff. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV. Stick around. We've got more video game goodness coming up in a sec. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. You might be joining via C31, C44, or Apple or Spotify podcasts. I'm Cringe here with Kart and Jason. And when you guys aren't playing Monster Hunter, which will be a lot over the coming months, now that you've really gotten through a lot of the late game content, you've been playing a lot of indie games, and we're slowly getting through both your reviews. What is Going Under, Kart? Please tell me.
So Going Under is a indie game that's released by the studio Aggro Crab and was published by Team 17. Now, this dropped around about, I'd say, almost a month ago. So it's a roguelite adventure about a fresh, wide-eyed intern named Jacqueline who arrives on her first day at a beverage company called Fizzle. Now, before the first stand-up meeting of the day can even begin, Jacqueline's first task is that she's ordered to clean up remnants of defunct companies that lay several floors underground from her offices. And from there, she quickly learns that these companies sink below the surface of the earth when they go bankrupt. And with their former employees, they turn into monsters and are forced to essentially aimlessly roam around the offices forever and ever. Essentially for eternity. And from there, Jacqueline investigates these companies to better understand their and also her current company's coexistence.
So what is that? That is the setting, the sort of backstory of the game. It brings you up to speed. Looking at gameplay of it, it looks to be more of a focus on gameplay through the rest of the game. Is there much of an ongoing plot, or is it more just a basis for the gameplay to exist?
Yeah, like there is a bit of a plot. There's a good amount of, I guess, not necessarily character development, but there's a lot of dialogue heavy sequences that you do play in the overworld. So you start off in a hub world, basically in the company Fizzle. You're in the offices and you speak to all of your colleagues. You've got like the marketing executive who's just all bright and bubbly all the time. You've got the secretary of the company at the reception who's all a bit airheaded, but she's also kind of strangely airheaded, but also on top of things. And you've also got the very surly, belligerent IT manager as well. Not speaking from experience, but there's a little bit of that too. So every character kind of is very personable. And I got to say, like, the first thing you'll notice is that the presentation is absolutely wonderful. Like, the UI design is really simple. It's nice. There's the dungeons that you explore are also very varied. They've got their own themes. The 2D art looks absolutely great. Some of the 3D models of the characters and enemies, they're kind of like nice and goofy enough. And they look like a neat cross between like Muppets and the inflatable tube men that you see at used car lots.
I was going to say Keita Takahashi. I was going to say pure Watam shit. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of Watam, a little bit of like almost like Loco Roco-y kind of Nobi Nobi Boy, that kind of stuff. So it really has like its vision in terms of presentation. It's right there. They knew exactly what they were doing. And like its penchant for minimalist design, it kind of is in itself like a tongue-in-cheek mockery of the many like infographics and visuals that you see associated with tech startups and like crowdfunding pitches and like those PowerPoint presentations in meetings that you go to that really should have just been emails. So like you definitely can see that it is just a big, wide satire of just late stage capitalism in general, but also just kind of just the main I guess toxic workplace culture and
just corporate hell. Absolutely.
Just corporate hell. Yeah. Again, like Going Under, it's that metaphor for like, you're essentially going down into hell to like just completely exercise monsters and demons. And it really nails the sardonic nature of its humor without like kind of stretching it too thin. Like some other games I noticed are starting to kind of get into this whole kind of, late stage capitalism is evil, but they're not. They don't seem to kind of have a bit of nuance in it, but where I feel that Going Under definitely nails that in terms of it being a dungeon crawler mechanically, but also like just thematically, it's all bright, bubbly, and fun. But there's an underlying sense of dread there that you only figure out later on until you start like keep playing the game, and you keep once you're about 5 hours in, you start to notice like things aren't quite what they seem. There's optional assist features, which has been popularized by games like The Last of Us 2, where it allows players who aren't particularly too seasoned with roguelikes, because most of them are pretty unrelenting in their difficulty, right? Like, telling someone to jump into a game of Rogue Legacy or The Binding of Isaac is absolutely just bonkers. You don't know what's Spelunky. Or Spelunky, for example, or Lama Lana or something. So the game allows you to kind of give yourself a bit more health. You give yourself a couple more hearts if you're not too seasoned with it. You can get your dodge to have more iframes than usual, or allow for better weapon longevity, so they can last a bit longer. So that way it allows you to get accustomed to the game, and you can switch it on and off like as soon as you want. You can just jump out of the game, turn the assists on, turn the assists off, depending if things get a bit too difficult or hard, and the game's not going to slight you for it. Which I find great. The unfortunate part I find about it is that the game is incredibly short. Now, that doesn't seem particularly too bad, because it's not really a problem that's inherently wrong with the game, because it's a bit of an anomaly compared to like the other genre, like to the genre of roguelikes in general, because it's really tough to find yourself in this already pretty niche genre of video games that are lauded for their endless longevity and versatility in design. I know a few people who have racked up 200 to 300 hours in Binding of Isaac alone. And the first thing you're going to be missing as well is that its story progression, given how hilarious and great the writing is and the characters are, it all ends way too quickly. And like you could probably get you can stretch it out for maybe about 10 hours maximum, I'd say, before you start to kind of feel a bit, okay, I need a bit more than this. And it's a bit of a shame, because it's like there's so many good characters, there's great writing, and I wanted more of it. So if I'm greedy for that, then guilty as charged. From a gameplay perspective, there's only like 3 whole dungeons in the game on release, and that can be completed around about the 5 hour mark, and then you just do more instances of it at the end. So it all depends on how keen you are on repeating content. So yeah.
Does it leave space well for DLC? Like, is, I guess, the story and the plot wrapped up in such a way that it seems rushed, or that they just kind of ran out of ideas? And in the case of them running out of ideas, it's like, cool, we just end up adding DLC, adding content to it post-launch. Or do you think that they had to be like, get this stuff out right now?
Well, that's actually one of the good points you bring up as well, because they've already released the post-release post-launch roadmap. And they did say that they're going to be adding new skills, new curses, new weapons, cosmetics that you can buy with in-game currency in the store. And they said that a new dungeon should come out in the next couple of content patches. So they did say that it's like, there's going to be more content out there, and we're going to slowly trickle it out. But I'd say that the main story arc kind of wraps up in a well enough way that it's like, it's fine. And then additional dungeons, because the game plays good enough, so you can kind of get away with it. And you're like, cool, I'll buy for more dungeons. But if there's actual like story expansions where you play as different characters and they have their own arcs, or you play as the actual characters in the hub, I'd be all for it. But it just sucks, because it's like you've got this great world and it's fully realized, and it feels like it's not wasted potential, but it's just like, I want more of a good thing. Like you get a slice of chocolate cake, and it's a tiny slice of chocolate cake, but you want the whole cake.
I just want to eat the whole cake.
I just want the whole cake, man. I want to be that kid in Matilda. I want that whole cake.
That's absolutely the first place my mind went as well. Going Under is available now on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. You can look forward to a bunch of post-release content if you decide to pick it up as well. Thank you for that review. And that actually brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thanks for joining us. If you want more social media, New Game Plus goodness in your life, why wouldn't you? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram /New Game Plus TV, on YouTube, youtube.com/NewGamePlusTV. On Twitch, we broadcast the show live every Thursday night around 8 p.m. If you're joining us on TV, you're actually missing out on a massive chunk of content. You're watching a 25-minute episode when the show actually ran for about an hour and a half. Twitch.tv/NewGamePlusTV, and the website is newgameplus.tv. Kart and Jason, thank you for joining me this week, and we'll catch you guys next time.